Now it's time for the best fight, AJ, of 2021. And you want to talk about so many different ways you can go. Obviously, it's going to be hard to really describe it because it's a fight, man. This is supposed to be competitive matchups. You're supposed to be back and forth things, not Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar like we saw on Fight Island in January. That was ass whooping of the year right there. That was not necessarily fight of the year. Even Chandler versus Gaethje. Some people have literally given that fight of the year, but when you look at it, it's just Gaethje whooping Chandler's ass for basically 3 rounds. So this is one of those situations where you can really choose whatever you want to choose, obviously, but the criteria should go very competitive back and forth matchup that basically had a lot of adversity. Because AJ, I'm going to be honest with you, my winner is going to break my rule just a little bit, my man. But it's because it was still back and forth in the craziness. So let's just name off a couple, my man. I don't know how many that you have, if you have 5 or whatever, you know what I mean? But just name off a couple fights that you think make fight of the year contention.
Man, well, kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, because those are just 2 of the fights that you just talked about that in my mind made me think like, oh, that was a great fight. But then I rewatched him, and you're right. It was an absolute show by Max Holloway. Yeah. It was an absolute destruction by Justin Gaethje. Not necessarily fight of the year, but I still put him up there because it was like what came to mind right away when I was thinking of these things. Not going to get those 2. They're not going to be the ones that I'm choosing. But those are the first 2 that came to mind when I thought of fight of the year. Maybe just because I'm a little biased to Holloway. Same thing with Gaethje. Love the fighters. But still put them up there. Not necessarily the best way to go about this one. Next one up, man. I actually chose the Reyes versus Prohoshka fight. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was going forth, and then Prohoshka with the TKO spinning elbow made it very interesting, but I still think Yuri was a little bit too dominant in that fight. Now, the ones that really got me going, the ones I was really like, oh, okay, this is what I'm thinking forth, Volkanovsky versus Ortega. That was one of the greatest fights we've seen in quite a long time. Volkanovsky in deep on those 2 submissions, man, and still able to pull the champ hard out and get things going. Volkanovsky versus Brian Ortega, very, very interesting fight, very close, very grudge match battle. Loved that fight. And the next one that's kind of out of left field, man, which, it's some people might not agree with this one other way, but I'm going Marlon Vera versus Davey Grant.
Okay.
Great fight, dude. Bloody fight. Very 2. Back and forth. Number 2. Yes, number 2. Yeah. Number 2. Because, man, that fight was intense. Very bloody, very back and forth. Both people had their ups and their downs, their moments where I thought they were going to win. Vera ends up pulling it out by unanimous decision. Very good fight, man. Those are my 5 that I got rocking with. But really, I got 2 or 3 that I think can win. What about you, Derek? Where are you going?
Okay, so I had kind of a real solid list that I've just been compiling over the year, man. And I got a couple that you're probably not even going to remember. This is how, like, deep in the trenches I'm talking about, man, where I was really going about it. So one of them that I definitely think deserves Fight of the Year nomination is TJ Brown versus Kai Kamaka III. It was a featherweight bout where TJ Brown won a very controversial split decision win here, man. It was such a back and forth fight. And Kai Kamaka is no longer with the promotion. He fights in Bellator now, but this is one of those fights that he lost that arguably he should have won. It was so close. It was neck and neck. Banger of a fight right there. Brad Riddell versus Drew Dober. Lightweight contest where Brad Riddell won versus unanimous decision. Listen, Drew Dober is a monster. The only person who's been able to truly annihilate him is Islam Makhachev, right? You know, so the back and forth between Riddell and Dober was definitely a beautiful thing to watch. Santiago Ponzinibio versus Miguel Baeza. Not a lot of people remember this fight, man, but this is Ponzinibio's first fight back from getting knocked out by Li Jingliang. He had something to prove. Ponzinibio was basically destroying the man in round 1, beat up the dude's calf for all of 5 minutes. Rounds 2 and 3, Ponzinibio put it on him, weathered the storm, war of attrition, won the fight versus via unanimous decision. So those were a banger. And then lastly, I guess the last 2 is Mike Davis versus Mason Jones, another lightweight bout. Mason Jones, this was his UFC debut, I believe, coming in from Cage Warriors. He was a double champion in Cage Warriors, came over to the UFC, fought Mike Davis, and fought a very, very hard-fought fight, but lost a unanimous decision. Lastly, AJ, Volkanovsky versus Ortega, of course, brother. So, listen, out of all of those fights that deserve that, I honestly think that Volkanovsky-Ortega is going to take the cake for me, and here's the reason why. One, and this is going to be biased, not a good reason, but it's my reason. These are my picks for my award, so I can pick whatever the fuck I want. I was at the fight. I was at UFC 266 right there. That's why I got the poster up. I saw the fight live in action, and when I tell you, AJ, that first off, it was like, okay, Volkanovsky, he's doing his thing. I picked Volkanovsky, so I'm rooting for him, all that good stuff, right? We got a lot of T-City fans, a lot of Nate Diaz fans in the building, right? Because Nate Diaz was fighting, so a lot of Latino love in there, brown pride up in the building, right? When I tell you when Volkanovsky got in those submissions that all the air got sucked out of the entire arena, bro. People were on their feet going crazy. Like, literally, people jaw dropped, like, watching it happen, thinking that, like, this is really going to happen. Ortega's really about to win the championship. On 2 occasions in that fight, man, it was so crazy. There was no other high-stake implication in any of these other fights that really make you say, like, oh, my God, my heart is jumping out of my chest. Do you feel me? I had no dog in the game, truly. Because at the end of the day, for the featherweight championship, we know who the real people's champ is. You know what I'm saying? Max Blessed Holloway, you know. No disrespect, because Volkanovsky, he's proved he's a true champion against Ortega there. But either way, man, that was such a banging fight, man. The implications, everything. It's hard to pick something else that's not that, man. So, cat out the bag. That is my pick for best fight of 2021. Brian Ortega versus Alexander Volkanovsky, simply because... And like I said, I'm breaking the rule because this is kind of in that Calvin Kattar, Max Holloway territory, but simply because Ortega was this close from actually becoming the champion, walking away by putting Volkanovsky to sleep, not tapping, but to sleep, right? And let's just say this for folks who are just listening. I'm putting my fingers together. Like, it's just that, you know, like the world's smallest violin, you know, that's how close it was, you know, of a fight right there for the adversity that the champion had to suffer. So that's my pick, AJ. Who is your pick for best fight of 2021?
It's hard to not give it to Volkanovsky versus Ortega, man. That's what I'm going with too. Not only was it the air, like you said, the air in the crowd was out, man. I was watching this one from home. The air in the entire apartment was out, bro. Like everywhere. Sasha Bear couldn't breathe. She was gasping too, man. This fight was so close. Volkanovsky even admitted to himself that he thought about tapping. He was like, yeah, you know, is this too deep? Do I have to get it in? And then he had a mental lapse. He was like, nah, fuck this. I'm in, bro. I'm champ mode. I love it. The whole aspect of the entire fight, man, everything about it. It definitely deserves fight of the year over here. I'm glad we're in consensus for this one, man. Volkanovsky versus Brian Ortega was a great fight.
Absolutely, man. And I think that's going to go down on one. It's going to be playing on UFC Fight Pass for many years to come, man, where people are talking about gritting out and a very, very hard fought win. So that's best fight of 2021 right there, folks.